Claude Code is not your average AI tool. It's an AI-powered coding assistant that's integrated directly into your terminal. The true power of Claude Code is in its ability to iterate over long periods of time, manage an extremely large context window, and to function both as an MCP server and client, as well as being able to deploy instances of Claude Code itself in order to run the tasks in parallel. My name is Felipe, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to use Claude Code for your flow development. The first thing you need to do is buy a subscription for Claude Code or use an API-based pricing system. Claude Code requires you to use any of these subscriptions. It can either be the $17 a month plan or the $100 to $200 a month plan. If you're interested in just playing around with Claude Code, we recommend the $17 a month subscription. The Pro plan itself is very limited if you're going to have extensive use of Claude Code. We recommend purchasing the $100 or $200 subscription if you're a serious developer that needs to build something very quickly, or if you're working with an extremely large code base and need to get up to date extremely quickly as well. In the interest of time, I have already set up a Flow project and a front-end project with React, just so I can show you how to use Claude Code. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is run the following command. And once you have it installed, you can see that you have the extension installed as well. You'll know that you have the extension correctly installed in your IDE if you can find the Anthropic logo on the upper right hand. There are two ways to start Claude. You can either type it within your terminal by just typing in Claude, or you can run it by clicking this button here. It will also run Claude as well. For now, I'm just going to use the one on the upper right hand. So I'm going to close this one by pressing exit. To make sure that Claude is correctly integrated within your IDE, you can just type /IDE and select cursor or the one you're using, and this blue ring will appear to make sure that you know that the IDE is connected. The heart of your Claude setup is the CLAUDE.md files. These are files that run within the context of every prompt you make, and they tell Claude exactly how it should respond, what are the files it should give importance to, what is the architecture of your whole code base, and just general information you want the agent to know every time you're prompting with it. You can generate one from scratch, or you can just run the /init command, and it will automatically initialize a new Claude.md file. As you can see, it's analyzing the code base, and it'll create a Claude.md to help capture the whole code base. As you can see now, Claude Code is trying to create this Claude.md file. So I'll just click the Shift tab so it won't ask again. Perfect, now it has finalized, and you can see the Claude.md file has been perfectly created. And it has the project structure, how the Flow smart contracts work, how the front end is working with Next.js, and specific commands for the Flow development. This Claude.md file that lives in your root is something that Claude Code will always run before responding. So it will always be part of the context of your agent. You can also have more granular control with Claude by setting up this .claude file and setting up the agents you want to run, the commands you want, the recurring commands you want the agent to follow, and specific settings you want to have. As you can see here on the bottom left, we are in the auto accept edits mode. And there are various modes that can function with Claude Code. We just need to click Shift tab to be able to cycle through them. So we have plan mode, the normal mode, and the auto accept mode. In auto accept, the agent will just simply iterate through the whole process until it can finalize the objective you have set out for it. In plan mode, the agent will not write any sort of code. It would just have a back and forth with you and create a game action plan that you can use in order to specify in a granular and incremental manner what are the tasks at hand that need to be fulfilled. And then just the normal mode is just simplified so that you can have a back and forth with the agent, and the agent can fix stuff for you in your code base. So in this specific Claude.md file, as you can see, the structure contains the boilerplate contracts within a Flow project, which are the counter contracts. But the issue is that this Claude.md file is just an overarching configuration file for the whole project. In this mono repo I have set up, I'm using the Flow folder here for all my Flow development related files and my front-end development related files. And so I can create a specific .claude file here, and then a Claude.md file here for my Flow and Cadence development related configuration. And the same thing can occur for my front end. So I can have a more granular detail on what are the things I want the agent to do when interacting with my specific Claude, with my specific Cadence contracts, and what I want to do when building my front-end development with React. There are also some key words that are used when prompting with Claude Code. For example, you can use think hard, think harder, or even ultra think. And this is going to determine the amount of resources of thinking tokens that are going to be used within the prompt. This is not some sort of prompt engineering, but this is actually a mapping that's built into the model itself. So if you want Claude to spend a really long time thinking and fleshing out every single idea of a specific implementation you want to do, I recommend you use the ultra-think keyword. You can also reference documents. So for example, in this specific CLAUDE.md file that I have created for my cadence contracts, I can reference it with the @ symbol. For example, this prompt, I am referencing the CLAUDE.md file in my flow folder. And I said, think hard on how to properly use the flow CLI tool and have an in-depth description on how to use them when working on cadence contracts. As you can see, the agent is spending these thinking tokens in order to properly gauge what it needs to do. And as you can see, it has created a comprehensive file that explains all of the core flow CLI commands with a small description of what that command does. Something else that's pretty cool with Claude Code is that you can specify the commands that you want to create in a recurrent manner. For example, I created this create/pr.md file that will help me create a pull request when I'm done with a specific feature I'm trying to build. I give the instructions of what I need to do and also give the instructions of what's the specific GitHub CLI tool I want it to call. The issue right now is that Claude is not aware of this command itself. That's why we need to reinitialize Claude. So we're gonna kill it by going /exit, and then we're gonna run it again. And now that we have initialized it once again, we can do create PR, and then you can see that we can set up an argument, and the argument will be the specific branch we would be working on. Another cool command you can do is fix this GitHub issue. You can just specify which specific issue, so it can be, I don't know, 1526, and Claude will use the GitHub CLI to look up that specific GitHub issue and figure out what it needs to do. In order for your command to take in some arguments, you need to include this aspect right here. This allows you to be able to continue typing after you have already specified which command you're using. Another tool that's super cool to use is the MCP feature. So you can just write the following command, Claude MCP add, and then you add the specific MCP you want to add to Claude, and it will do that for you. Once you have added this MCP server, you will need to reinitialize Claude Code. So I have already cleared mine out, exited, and now I initialize it again. Now I can just run /MCP, and then you can see all the MCP servers we have available. For example, we have the Playwright MCP, which is one I recently connected, and then you can look at the 24 tools it has. This is a really good tool in general because it helps you close that feedback loop when you're working on your front-end development. For example, you can use Claude Code, and specifically it will use this Playwright MCP in order to take screenshots of the front end. So you can say, hey, you know what, Claude Code, I'm working on this specific aspect of my front end. Look at the results, and then it'll be able to go and then take a screenshot so it can understand what it has been doing. Something I really like to do is install the GitHub CLI tool so that Claude Code can write my PRs for me. And I can set up this and also as well within my settings.json file in the .claude folder. In general, Claude Code becomes very powerful the more tools you give it because it is able to iterate. Just like humans are, it's hard for agents and humans to one-shot an objective. But if you give it the ability to iterate over and over again, after 2 and 3 attempts, it will get things pretty well done. So the trick here is to be able to close that feedback loop so that the agent can look at its work, see, okay, what have I done? Is this correct? And if it's not, let me go fix it. One last tool I want to show you guys to do is hit the /permission command, and this will grant you access to see what tools Claude Code is allowed to use, it is absolutely not allowed to use, and the workspace it is allowed to interact with. So for example, I can add a new rule, and here is a list, for example, of the allowed tools I give it. So you can search up files with this --ls command, and then I can just paste it here. And then I can set it up in my local settings or in just my overall project settings or in my user settings that should be run for all of my Claude instances. For now, I'm just going to use a bit more of granular detail and just set it up for my local settings. And then as you can see, this settings.local.json file has been created with the permissions I have granted it with. For example, something I like to do is make sure that Claude cannot, in any case, be able to remove any of my files or merge any of the implementations I've done with my GitHub pull requests. This settings.json file within your .claude folder is how you are going to have a very granular detail on the implementations you want Claude Code to do. The really cool thing about Claude Code is that you can put these settings.json files within your GitHub repo. So it is the same settings that everybody that's working on a project can share, right? So if you want everybody to use the same configuration for Claude Code, you can specify this within your project configuration. Let's say you want to have a little bit more granular detail and control over how you want Claude Code to interact. Well, you do that with the settings.local.json file, and then you can put this file within your .gitignore. Okay, so basically I've showed you a couple of tools. I've showed you a couple of tricks, nice tips and tricks, but right now I want to show you how the actual workflow should go. So something I really like to do is, in general, when I'm working with Claude, I'll make sure that I have a game plan. So I basically have a back and forth of an idea with Claude. So I'll just go to plan mode, and then on plan mode, I'll bounce ideas with Claude Code. I'll say, hey, you know what? I'm trying to implement this thing, this X, Y, and Z. What do you think about this? Or is there anything we should change? And we just bounce ideas back and forth until I have a good understanding of what I want to build and how to build it. So for example, let's say I wanted to build a on-chain form of Pokemon, right? So I don't know exactly how I want to do it, what technologies or what contracts I want to use. So I'll have this back and forth with Claude, and let's say Claude, the end result is that Claude tells me, hey, you should have this NFT system where these NFTs can battle each other. There's like a battle system, and they can evolve, and it'll generate a new NFT that has new traits. So it'll basically Pokemon on chain, right? So the specific contracts I want to use and the specific architecture I want to use, and also the specific aspects of my front end, for styling or whatever it might be, Claude Code and I can just have this back and forth in order to understand what I should be doing and what's the overall game plan. Then I'll ask Claude Code to generate some sort of visual aid so I can understand a bit more of the architecture of how it works. So a lot of times I use mermaid diagrams. So I'll tell Claude Code, hey, create a mermaid diagram file for me that explains exactly how all of these bits and pieces work together and how they all interact among themselves. So I know what contracts are interacting with which contracts and what needs to be integrated within the front end. And then I'll do one last round of confirming the knowledge base that Claude Code does, where I ask Claude Code to read specific files that are extremely important for the development process. And then I'll say, okay, use these files as reference, make sure that you understand them. And once you have understood them, confirm with me what you have learned. And once I can confirm that the information Claude Code has is actually correct, then I'll say, okay, now let's create a game plan. Now let's actually set up a to-do list of the things that we need to implement. So for example, when working with a really large code base, let's say I have this flow and this mono repo where I have my flow contracts and my front end. For example, I can run this command which specifies launch a subagent to read through the flow folder and launch another one to read through the front end folder. Once completed, confirm with me the information you have learned. This will make sure that Claude Code can run different instances of Claude Code itself in order to figure out what it's doing. And also, funny enough, it will be able to function as an MCP server and client here at the same time, because it will be able to provide information of specific aspects of your code base and work as an MCP server in that manner. So as you can see here, we have the task. Every time you see task, and also here task as well, it's actually Claude Code deploying an instance of Claude Code itself. So it creates a Claude Code instance and sends it to do a specific task, and then it'll bring back the information it has learned, or once it has completed the task. This is incredibly powerful because you can launch multiple Claude Code instances to work in parallel. So let's say you want to work, integrating certain APIs, and then it'll be able to do that through some sort of testing workflow or testing based workflow, and be able to return the results of that workflow as it is occurring so that other aspects of your code base can work in parallel. Okay, fantastic. The subagents completed their work and they returned the information regarding their findings. Something else that you can do within Claude Code is specify the memory. Memory mode is used to specify important information for Claude Code to remember. For example, if Claude Code is extremely verbose with its responses and you want it to be very clear and concise, you can specify within the memory. So always use very clear and concise language when responding. And then I can specify this memory within my project memory or my user memory. Let's go with the project memory. So something very powerful that cursor agents do is that when you're trying to vibe code with cursor agents, they do have these checkpoint systems where you can revert to your previous checkpoint if the intended implementation that the agent tried to do is in fact incorrect, right? So let's say Claude Code tries to implement a new change and you're like, this is completely wrong, revert it, where you need to revert it. It sometimes has a bit of an issue doing that. So something I like to do is make sure you're doing commits very frequently and make sure you're all like, as soon as you have something working, a feature that's working, you have to commit and make a proper PR so that you know at what point you kept things that are completely working and they are perfectly fine. You can always go back to them and work on experimental branches within your Git trees, but make sure to always be committing frequently and never on main. So now that we have all these tools in place, I'll teach you a bit about the workflow I use. So I tend to use a tasks folder in which I specify what is my entire to-do list. For example, we spoke earlier before about having a Pokemon-like NFT game. So I'm going to set out the tasks for that. For example, right now I created this prompt in order to create a Pokemon-like game that's on-chain. I'm going to have all the smart contract logic, everything that's blockchain related, all those interactions are going to be happening on my flow folder. And all of my front-end development for all the UI is going to be set out in the front-end folder. So now, as you can see, this is the game plan that is created. So first, we need to create the NFT contract that has like these specific traits, and then have an evolution system, and then a game state system, and then we're going to go on the game mechanics for the battle system, and then finally we're going to build the front end and integrate it. So here we can proceed by having auto accept or manually approving edits. But I'm going to keep on planning because I want to add one last thing here. So the last thing I require Claude to change is to create a todo.md file within my tasks folder. This to-do file is going to contain everything we need to do. It's going to have a project overview, which is going to explain what the project is doing. And then it's going to create a specific phase for each aspect that needs to be developed. It would also contain a description for all the tasks at hand and an acceptance criteria if it's going to fail or be approved for a PR. As you can see here, each task will have a clear title and description, files to create and modify, dependencies so the agent knows what must be done first, and the acceptance criteria. Perfect. The plan is now complete. And as you can see, these, we have different phases for the core NFT infrastructure and how to design the creature NFT contract. It has here what it needs to create, what are the dependencies, what are the description, how to implement it in the acceptance criteria, and the testing. And as you can see, it has done this for each and every single feature we need to implement for our game to work. It even has a battle system UI, and even has social features for player profiles. So this is why it's incredibly powerful, because something I like to do is be able to work on different aspects of my code base. So I can tell Claude Code, hey, you know what? I want you to start working on this design, the creature NFT contract, okay? So I'll prompt it saying something like, I want you to work on this on task 1.1 right now. And I'll give it free range to do it. I'll give it, control over all the files it wants to edit. And then I'll say, after you have completed this task, I want you to create a report of what you have done and why you have done it, and create this report and place it within the tasks folder. So, I can go and work on other aspects of the code base. And so once the Claude Code finishes its iteration process, I'm able to look into the report that it has done. And I just have to review that everything is correct. I review that, okay, this makes sense. This is correct. Okay, this contract is working correctly. Okay, once I have reviewed everything else, I'm like, okay, this is fine. This implementation is fine. Let's do a commit now and push that to our GitHub repo. If there's something wrong with the attempted implementation, I'll say, hey, Claude, you're messing up doing this thing, or this specific feature, you're not really understanding on what are the main aspects, or what's like the goal we're trying to implement, or what is the success criteria. So don't be afraid to hit the escape button when Claude is operating, because it doesn't have this checkpoint system. So you need to be aware of when Claude is messing up and say, hey, you're messing up. This is the correct way to do it. Claude Code is incredibly powerful when building this manner, or when you want to implement something that's small and you know what is a very clear success criteria for it. So you can do a test-driven development where you first make a commit, make a test and then commit that test, and then you just iterate until that test is successful, and then you can push it all together. But yeah, so basically what you're doing there is to make a test that you know is very simple. For example, it's a specific feature you want to implement. Let's say it's a button, or it's something in which you can have unit tests, integration tests, or a whole end-to-end workflow test. The metric of a successful criteria is very clear. There's no subjective criteria about it, so it's very easy to understand if it has succeeded or if it has failed. And as I said before, something that's really powerful with Claude Code is being able to close that feedback loop. So when you're building with your front end, you can specify Claude to be like, hey, use the MCP, right? Use this playwright MCP and take a screenshot, which we can see here within the tools. Take a screenshot of this specific page you're working on. Or you can also take screenshots. You can also take screenshots and put it within the context of Claude. For example, I'm going to take a screenshot here of just this page. And once I have it here, I can select it. And then I can hold Shift and then click it here. And then we can see that now it is within the text chat. And I can say, what is this image? So you can see here, this screenshot is of Claude Code's response, and blah, 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 blah. But it can see into an image and understand what's going on. So a lot of times what I like to do is say like, ooh, I really like this front-end feature. I really like this button, or how this page looks like. I really like how this site looks like. What's the vibe of this site? Can you try to replicate that? Can you try to replicate this specific feature of this site? And then that's going to improve your whole workflow incredibly, because you're closing that feedback loop. You're allowing Claude Code to get higher, richer context and be able to iterate on the work it has done. So yeah, this is incredibly powerful, specifically for building front ends, for building your smart contract development. You can feed it your results of your CLI your CLI tools, so that it just speeds up your whole flow. So don't be shy and get ready to build your next big Flow project. Claude Code is extremely powerful, and this work we're doing here with Flow is making sure that Flow is the best chain to build with AI. I hope you guys learned a lot during this video, and I'll see you next time.